Welcome to Thanatology 13. I'm your host, Becky Floyd, and today we're exploring what happens to us when death stops being abstract and becomes real. Today we'll be using this gorgeous oil painting titled Death Comes to the Banquet Table by Italian artist Giovanni Martinelli. The painting was done around 1640 and is a beautiful example of memento mori. Memento mori means remember you will die and serve as poignant reminders of death's inevitability and universality. It reminds us to fully live for today because tomorrow is not promised. For many people in contemporary Western societies, death exists at a distance. It's medicalized, professionalized, and often hidden behind institutional language and closed doors. But thanatology reminds us that life only becomes fully legible when we understand it in relation to death. When death becomes real, whether through the loss of someone we love, a diagnosis, a brush with mortality, or even the quiet recognition that time is finite, something shifts, not just emotionally, but psychologically and physically. This episode is not about how we should respond to death. It's about what humans actually do when mortality enters awareness. One of the most persistent misconceptions about death anxiety is that it lives primarily in the mind. As if fear of death were an idea we could think our way out of. But research across neuroscience, trauma studies, and anthropology tells us something very different. Mortality awareness activates systems far older than language or philosophy. Long before humans could symbolically imagine death, organisms had to survive threat, loss, and uncertainty. When death becomes real, the body often responds before meaning has a chance to catch up. This is why people report sensations like tightness in the chest, shallow breathing, nausea, numbness, agitation, fatigue, or a sense of unreality. These are not metaphors. They are nervous system responses. From a trauma-informed perspective, this matters a great deal because when we expect death awareness to be processed purely through insight or acceptance, we misunderstand the sequence. The body moves first. Understanding follows later. Psychologically, the realization of death is not just an emotional event. It is, in many ways, a neurological disruption. Neuroscientist Mary Frances O'Connor describes grief as a form of learning. When we form deep attachments, our brain's neural circuitry reorganizes to include that person as part of our internal map of the world. Their presence becomes predicted. When that person dies, the brain does not immediately update. It continues to expect them. This is why people often report seeing the deceased, reaching for their phone, or feeling that the person is about to walk through the door. This isn't pathology. It's just the brain struggling to reconcile old predictions with a new reality. Physiologically, this process is taxing. Mortality awareness and grief activate the stress response system, including something called the HPA axis, releasing cortisol and adrenaline. Over time, this can impact immune function, cardiovascular health, and emotional regulation. The body isn't malfunctioning, it's recalibrating. Across cultures and contexts, certain psychological responses appear over and over again when death becomes real. Not universally and not all at once, but with remarkable consistency. Anxiety is often the most visible response, but this anxiety is rarely just about dying. It's about separation, loss of identity, loss of continuity, loss of meaning, and loss of belonging. Avoidance is equally common and often misunderstood. Avoidance doesn't always look like denial. It can look like constant distraction, overworking, the use of humor, or intellectualizing. It can also take the form of spiritual bypassing or even relentless productivity. From a nervous system perspective, avoidance is often the body saying, "This is too much, too fast." Dissociation may emerge when mortality awareness overwhelms available coping capacity. Numbness, emotional flattening, or feeling unreal are protective responses, not failures. And for many, mortality awareness triggers an urgent search for meaning, control, or legacy. This is where Ernest Becker's work becomes particularly relevant. Becker argued that much of human behavior is shaped by attempts to manage death anxiety through what he called immortality projects. These responses are not moral shortcomings. They are patterned human adaptations. How death becomes real is shaped deeply by culture. In modern Western societies, death has been largely medicalized. Anthropologist Margaret Locke argued that this often strips death of shared meaning, leaving individuals to navigate mortality in isolation. In contrast, many cultures embed death awareness into collective rituals, cosmologies, and life narratives. For example, the Bara people of Madagascar look at life and describe it as a journey from the mother's womb to the father's tomb. For others, death is understood as a transformation rather than an end point. These frameworks don't eliminate grief, but they help to distribute it. Psychologist Robert Niemeyer describes grief as a process of meaning reconstruction. Loss disrupts our life story, and part of living forward involves integrating the event of death into the broader narrative of relationship and identity. And this is where expressive and symbolic practices become essential. When language fails, the body and imagination can still speak. Research in expressive arts and trauma studies consistently shows that symbolic image, movement, and making things allow experiences to be held without forcing a resolution. This is not about fixing grief. It is instead about giving it form. When death becomes real, the question is not how to eliminate fear or discomfort. The question is how to recognize what the body and mind are already doing in response. Death education does not push people towards acceptance. It instead offers orientation. It says, this is human, this is patterned, and you are not broken for responding this way. The body remembers, and remembering, understood gently and accurately, can be the beginning of steadiness rather than fear. Thank you for watching or listening to this month's episode of Thanatology 13, where we talk about death so we can live more fully. Please join us at deatheducationcentral.com and like, share, and follow us on social media.